Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very inspiring show coming right up with special guest, Roe-Patterson, and he's here today to share with us his new book, Crude Blessings. Now, Roe is a 23-year industry veteran of the oil and gas services business. He was promoted to president and CEO of Basic Energy Services in September 2013 and is recognized as the top public company CEO by the Fort Worth Business Press for 2014. Prior to his recent appointment, he served as the company's senior vice president and chief operating officer from 2011 to 2013. He began his tenure at Basic in 2006 and has held multiple positions in executive leadership since joining the company. So let's welcome to the show, Roe-Patterson.
Thank you for having me.
What a pleasure it is to have you here and to talk about your new book. You've got to be pretty excited as an author. I know it's been getting some really good reviews.
Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, I'm not a professional author. I have another day job, but the book and the story was one that I knew needed to be told, and I worked real hard on it, and it's excellent to have this kind of reception. So for someone like me who really hasn't done a lot of writing in the past, it's flattering to have someone talk about how much they were engaged in the book and how much it spoke to them and how good of a read it was. So yeah, I'm very excited.
Well, now you can add author to your list of all the things that you do, because I know you're a pretty busy guy. So it's got to be kind of a fun thing, especially when, this book is about your dad, Glenn Patterson. And so we look at just his story and his life, and my goodness, he's really exemplary. I think a lot of people look at that, as kind of going, gosh, I wish business was like that today,
I agree. I think many times it's what's missing today in business is the whole idea and the thought that your handshake should be all you need. You don't need a contract. You don't need lawyers and a lot of legalities behind everything. If your word is good enough, it should be that should be it. And unfortunately, in today's business world, it's very seldom that things are done on a handshake or contracts are written on a napkin. That just doesn't happen much anymore, and it is a shame. But there's a lot of lessons to learn from the legacy that Dad left. He had a lot of integrity in everything he did. He wasn't a perfect guy by any stretch, but he wanted everyone who came into contact with both him and his company to say, I was treated fairly.
Oh, that's a big thing, especially nowadays. We look at that, and it's like, gosh, we can learn a lot from Crude Blessings. There's a lot of detail in there. Well, and why don't you share with our listeners a little bit, because your dad, at one point he was a school teacher, right?
That's right. He started out to trying to get out of the oil field. He put himself through college working in the oil field and had worked in the oil field in his high school days too, working for his father off and on. But he really didn't want to be in the oil field. His experience in the oil field was that it was hard work and a tough way to make a living. And he thought teaching school sounded a lot more fun. And he was having fun. He was a basketball referee. He was teaching a DECA course for a high school in San Antonio, Texas, and he was happy there until my uncle Clovis came looking for him, trying to start a drilling company.
And then everything kind of changed from there, right?
It did. It was the middle of the boom of the late 70s, and oil and gas industry was just incredibly vibrant industry. It was on fire. Lots of tax incentives to build equipment, and it seemed like everybody was trying to build a drilling rig, and so they got caught up in the frenzy, and the rest of the story, as they say, is history. But they went almost broke a few times, or were broke, and just really never filed bankruptcy, and a lot of trials and tribulations along the way. But they ended up being a survivor and building the second largest land drilling company in the world.
Wow. And it really seems that your dad overcame a lot of adversity, and a lot of it has to do with his mindset throughout all this.
he was tenacious, to say the least, and never quit, a never die kind of attitude about everything. It didn't matter whether you were playing him in ping pong or cards or if it was in business. He just wasn't going to take no for an answer, wasn't going to, lose, that just wasn't in his vocabulary. And so, when they hit the wall a few times during the bust periods of the mid-'80s, he would just go find a way to make it, to squeak by. And it didn't matter what it was. He was always looking for that edge, and he always never surrender, never give up kind of attitude. And perseverance was just, that to him, that was just how you lived. And that's, he never saw a situation where he wasn't ready to plow through it and just get to the other side.
Do you think you've learned some of those very positive traits from him?
Oh, no doubt. I mean, it's you can't help but to learn from a guy like that. I was fortunate enough to be his kid, so yeah, I got ingrained with a lot of that tenacity. So yeah, it's I've had similar ups and downs in my career, and I run a public oil and gas service company today, and we've had plenty of challenges and trials and tribulations as well. So yeah, it's a good thing that I have that ingrained in me, because if I didn't, I sure picked the wrong industry to be part of.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I was really touched by is just how much of a positive attitude your father had. He was a go-getter for sure, but he really had a positive attitude regardless of what was going on.
He did, when he had his down moments or where if he ever was down, he wasn't going to let anyone see it. So it wasn't, it was never on his face. It was never in his attitude or in his words. It was always, let's go get them. Let's get it done. It was, attitude was everything for him. So if he ever had a moment where he had a lot of doubt, and I'm sure he did, and I'm sure he had a lot of moments where he didn't know where to go next or what to do next, he never let anyone see it.
Well, what a great story for people today, because I think a lot of times, everyone goes through periods of time where they're not sure what the next step is or how to proceed to go forward, and it looks like they have their back up against the wall.
That's right. I think the biggest challenge of Dad's life, other than what the business struggles, was his fight with Alzheimer's. And, he initially said, I'm going to beat this, and I'm going to, live as long as I can and be as healthy as I can. And when the disease started to take a toll, you could really see some of the setback and the doubt. And actually that's when he found, his faith in God. And, so it was interesting, the one time when he really couldn't, get through something on his own. His faith in God got him through. And, so it's a story, that I thought was so, humbling, in that here's this, this guy who's fought everything and and won. And then all of a sudden, he's up against one of the most fearful opponents ever, a disease, a life-ending disease like Alzheimer's. And oh gosh, what's going to happen to this character now? How's he going to face that? And the story is a good one. He faced it with a lot of courage, but he got his courage and he got his attitude and his battery recharged from his faith in God.
That's so important nowadays, and actually pretty much in any time in somebody's life is their faith and how they walk with that. And a lot of times, it's something that we kind of do, not really thinking about it, but, when it comes down to a point in our time, in our life when we're really struggling, a lot of times people do reach out to God.
Absolutely, it's been that way in my life as well, and I that's the story I wanted to tell. I wanted people to see how you can be on a high of highs and on a low of lows, and it really doesn't matter if you have that relationship with God. You can always get to the other side, and there's always a bright story to be told.
One of the other things that your book talks about that I was real impressed with is your dad's business ethics. And we kind of talked about that a little bit, but I'd love for you to share with our listeners, because I know that he has even helped out people who were like competitors in business.
That's right. He always, in business, he always felt like everyone has to win. So if everyone's winning, then, then we're all going to win. There can't just be one winner. So customers have to win. Vendors have to win. Your employees have to win. And even your competitors, because if they're suffering, it's probably a bad reflection on the whole industry and probably on you too. It's just a matter of time before you're going to suffer. Now, he wanted to beat you. He was competitive. He wanted to beat his competitors, but he wanted to do it fair and square, and he kind of wished them the best too. He always felt like if they're doing good, I'm probably going to be doing good too. So yeah, I can remember him loaning parts and equipment to competitors, and I was scratching my head. Well, why are you doing that? That's your competitor. And he said, well, because he needed it, and because it was the right thing to do was the answer. And so he always felt like that sense of integrity, sense of honor, a sense of a clinging to honesty. All of these ethical ways of running a business were so important to him, and he, like I said, he wasn't perfect, and the company wasn't perfect, but they tried to be. There was a striving for that ethics and honor in business, and that level of integrity is not common enough today either in the business world.
Yeah. What's one of your earliest memories of being with your dad, in the oil industry?
Oh gosh, some great memories. I mean, I used to ride to the rigs with him, not having anything to do, or if he didn't have anywhere to put me when he needed to get to a rig, I just went with him. So, I can remember being 5, 6 years old and crawling all over this equipment, and to a 5 and 6 year old, a drilling rig looks like, a skyscraper, and I just thought it was the neatest thing in the world. But, I rode with him all the time, and that was just life, we were headed to a rig, and that was I knew right where we were going, right what we were doing, and even at 5 and 6 years old, I can remember just loving it, being eat up with the, crawling all over the rigs and running around on location, which the thought of that today is just completely unbelievable, letting a 5-year-old run around on a drilling location, but there I was doing it, so.
Well, times are different. I mean, I can remember being in the back of my great-grandfather's car, and, there are no seatbelts back there, so you just get sliding back and forth. I mean, we've got different times that we live in, and we do things differently now, so you kind of understand that. And it's interesting. Was your father and just, being involved at such a young age is what inspired you to also get into the industry?
No doubt. I tell people I was being trained to be a CEO, from 5 years on. And I didn't know it, but I was being trained to be a leader and to be a business leader and to be an innovator and to try to have an entrepreneurial, spirit and a no quit spirit. So, it was just a natural progression for me, I guess, whenever, I got the opportunity to move up, in the industry. I jumped on it, and it was like putting on an old pair of gloves. It was just a natural fit for me. So, yeah, I think he was training me from a very young age. Whether he knew it or I knew it at the time at all, it was just a natural, progression for me.
Well, it sounds like every part of the rig. From the ground up, what needs to be done and how things need to work. And it sounds like your dad was very involved in that as well.
He was, he knew the business very well, and he knew what he didn't know. And I think that's real important today. And I try to remember that too. There's always somebody that knows a piece or a part of a business a lot better than you do. So you surround yourself with this talent, these wise and gifted people. And that was a big part of Dad's success. He knew what he didn't know. He didn't try to pretend that he knew more than he did, and he surrounded himself with some very talented folks. And I've tried to do that in my business career as well. Surround myself with good people and cling to them and listen to them, so that you don't get off on the wrong path.
Well, and so on that topic, I mean, we've got technology. It's kind of, and many times it's way ahead of where we are as far as being able to understand how to use it in these different industries. How has the integration of technology worked in the oil industry?
Well, it's for technological advancement, we're a slow industry because we're kind of old school, and we don't always embrace the new stuff as fast or as quickly as we should, because we like how things work, and it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks, that kind of mentality. But I would say over the last 15 to 20 years, the industry has just taken a quantum shift. So really leapfrogged, unbelievable amount of technological advancement in the industry today. We've become a much more efficiency driven industry. So if less of the kind of wildcatting days of that people remember from the TV show Dallas, where we're out drilling big wildcat wells and things like that. It's not really that way anymore. This is a manufacturing process almost. So efficiency is the name of the game. And so every time we can lower cost throughout the industry by some sort of technological advancement and some sort of efficiency gain, that's really the driver for the industry today. So that shift's, like I said, been over about a 20-year period. We do horizontal drilling today, long lateral horizontals. The frac technologies that we use today are very safe on the environment and very efficient in the industry, and that's why the U.S. is now the largest oil producer in the world. We're making more oil than Russia or Saudi Arabia, either one. So that efficiency is what's driven our industry, and it's all come through technological advancement. What used to take us 30 days to do today takes us about 3 or 4 days, and so that's a pretty big shift.
That is impressive. I mean, I applaud you, because it's really kind of taking your father's legacy and expanding it in many ways.
Well, the Dad would be amazed at the things that we do today, and the changes in the industry. I mean, he would just be amazed at what's happened, and that's just the last 15 years. So it's incredible. I'm excited about what the industry can do in the next 15 years.
Yeah, without a doubt, the changes that will be coming down the line. Be interesting to see what happens next. Well, and it kind of leads me to I'm curious. Why was it important for you to write Crude Blessings?
Well, it was, as I said, I thought over and over a few times that this is a story that just not enough people knew. A real rags to riches. This guy had nothing, put himself through school, was a broke school teacher in San Antonio, Texas, and just an amazing story of trials and tribulations to hit the level of success that they hit. And then right when he's at the peak of it, and retiring on this high note of unbelievable success, he gets hit with a couple of really big disasters. One was a CFO that Patterson had employed who regrettably embezzled and defrauded the company out of several $1 million. Ended up being the third or fourth largest embezzlement case in U.S. history, and that was embarrassing for my father to be part of that. He was the COO and president of the company, and my uncle Clovis Talbot was the CEO, and they trusted this guy, and he stole $78 million from them, and they couldn't believe it. It was an embarrassment beyond belief that they had that happened on their watch. And so they worked very hard to fix that and repair both the company's image and and the company was always financially in pretty good shape, so it didn't hurt the company, from a big financial impact, but it was embarrassing, and it was a tarnished legacy in his mind, and so he worked very hard to try to fix that before he retired, and I think he did. And then just as he's retiring, he's diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and it was sad, but he found his path to God through that. And he died on a high note, and that's just a very good story in my mind. And my kids didn't really know that story, and some of my dad's close friends didn't know all the pieces and the parts of the story. And I said, I'm just going to try to memorialize this, and really started out writing the book as more of a just a memoir. And then I thought, this is more than that. It's just a really good story, and I'm going to set it up for some good storytelling, and that's what I tried to do. I had some help, great help putting the book together and putting the stories in the right order, and I think in the end we made a really cool setting. And so I've had multiple people tell me that once they picked the book up, they could not put it down because every chapter just kept them on a cliffhanger, and they had to keep going to find out what happened. And that's what I wanted to do, tell that kind of story that you had to get to the end of.
Well, you did a beautiful job at that. The book is a book. I mean, I picked it up once I started reading. I couldn't put it down. There's a lot of stories in here that relate to how, in many ways, just how to be a better person, how to treat others in business in a better way. It's more than what most people would think.
And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to put a book together that not only told the story of a great business leader and a great business story, but a great life story too. There's some religious context to it. There's business context. There's some great anecdotal stories in there just about, ups and downs. And so it really doesn't matter whether you want to read a book about being a good person, or if you wanted to read a good book about finding religious faith, or if you wanted to read a good book about, all-American success and success in business, the book's got something for you.
Mm-hmm. Without a doubt. Was there anything that, when you were getting the book together and collecting these stories, was there anything that surprised you that you weren't initially aware of?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I did a lot of interviewing of family and friends, and stumbled on a few stories that I kind of knew I knew a little bit about it, but I didn't know enough. And once I finally got to the heart of the story and got all of the details, I was amazed. It was even better story than what I thought it was. Sometimes stories sort of take on a life of their own, and over the years they get embellished a little bit. But you kind of go back and ask these questions of some of the characters that were involved, and what I kept finding out was the story was even better than I thought it was, and that was really cool for me. So yeah, and it was therapeutic. Losing Dad the way I lost him was tough. It was tough on my brother and I and my mom. Alzheimer's. I say, there's a lot of bad diseases out there, and cancer is very hard on the patient, and ALS is very hard on the patient, and Alzheimer's is hard on the patient too. But it's really hard on the family, because there gets to a point with Alzheimer's when really the patient is really just doesn't know what's happening, there's no real lucidity or comprehension of what's really going on to their bodies and to their health, and they're really out of their their present mind. And that's such a sad thing, and it's really hard on the family to watch that. So, the book was therapeutic. I hope it was therapeutic for my brother and my mother as well, because, they helped a lot in putting the stories together as well.
Well, and I understand that you and your wife have become very involved in the Alzheimer's Association in Texas, because of, what your father went through.
Yeah, it sort of, going through something like this will slingshot you into action, no doubt, and all of a sudden, an association that probably didn't mean nearly as much to you, a few years back starts to become very important to you. I I think the Alzheimer's Association became so important to us because I realized how much we needed it. We didn't use it. We didn't use it the way we should have. And so my message is for patients and for caregivers and loved ones of diagnosed individuals is to, you need to go to the organization. You need to go to the sites. You need to see what kind of help they offer and what kind of coaching they have. And knowing what to expect is an unbelievable help and benefit in facing a disorder like this. And that's what the organization is so good for. So, yeah, we're proud to help. We donated 25% of the book's proceeds to Alzheimer's care and research, and I think that's important. And once you go through an experience like this, you can't help but get involved, in my opinion.
Well, without a doubt. Well, Ro, where can people connect with you and learn more about your book, Crude Blessings?
Well, I think the website crudeblessings.com is a great place to start. There's some reviews there that they can read and a little bit of the background information about the book and why it was written. They can always reach out to me through the website, and I'll try to answer any questions that they might have. But really just need to read the book and get started. Read the foreword. It was written by my uncle, Clovis Talbot, and I think once you read the foreword in the first chapter, you're hooked. You got to know how this ends.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, this is by far just a read when you start, no matter where you start in the book, you just pick it up and you cannot put it down. It's a great read and not what most people, I think, would expect. So I'm glad that we've had this time to talk about your book, Crude Blessings. Ro, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you, Ro. It's been a pleasure to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, Crude Blessings. Again, if you'd like to connect with Ro, you can at crudeblessings.com, and we'll have the link below. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.